Peace and welcome to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. I am Minister Charmaine and I'm speaking to you from the UK branch. Welcome to another Friday night Bible discussion. I am so excited to be hosting this discussion on relationships, and I want to welcome you to our panel of speakers who will be sharing so many fruitful things with you. So producer, if we could bring up the panel members. Excellent. Brilliant. So on the screen, we have Amira, known as Wafa, the beautiful Wafa. Welcome, Wafa. How are you doing? We also have our lovely Edward. And we also have, for those of you coming in new to this nation, this is one of the first people that you will see. It is our lovely Samuel. Okay, guys. So we have a fruitful lesson to share with you. So the lesson today is about relationships. And now we all know that relationships, that topic is very, very broad. So we are going to scale it down a little bit. And of course, we're going to focus on the relationship that the children of Israel have with the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. But we also want to talk about the things that contribute to a healthy, functioning relationship. We want to have that discussion because this is a gray area, and so often so many of us enter into relationships without giving it a second thought. So panel members, I'm going to hand over to Wafa and just say, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts? What do you want to share with us?
Peace, everyone. I feel like relationships is a topic that is, especially when we talk about relationships, the first thing that comes to our mind is a relationship between a man and a woman. And I feel like there's so many messages out there that we feel confused by. I certainly felt confused when I came to this country because of my upbringing compared to what I'm witnessing was two different type of approach to how a relationship should be. I come from a place, like my background, I'm from Yemen, but was born and raised in Abu Dhabi. So I was raised there. And as a woman, witnessing my mum growing up and the women around me as well, in that country, a woman conducted herself a certain way. A woman knew her role, knew what she should be doing, what she needs to do, and a man knew as well his position in the environment, or in a relationship. So when I came to this country, I felt so confused. Obviously, as I became interested in understanding about relationship, what was being put out there was two different complete things. So obviously today's topic is going to be about building a healthy relationship. And there's so many things we can go through, obviously building a healthy relationships. And I think the first most important thing is the effective communication, because there's nothing without communication. There has to be an understanding. And how does understanding take place? It's through effective communication. So that's, what do you guys think?
I think what you've said as well, I think you're talking about coming from Yemen, coming from a different country. We're talking about culture and the different ways in which different communities approach relationships depending upon their culture, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what you're talking about. So of course it would have been, the Western culture is different to the culture that you was raised in, right? So I think that's why it's going to be a fruitful discussion. So Edward, Samuel, do you want to give us a little bit of background on your take on relationships generally before we get into the meat of things?
Yeah, well, I'll go first. I've been in a long-term relationship now. And I'm just going to give a few insights into, how my relationship is with my partner. And I'm going to kind of relate it to relationships of today.
Yes.
The youth that are growing up today, what they're growing up listening to, watching on TV, social media, it's all changed compared to how our parents grew up and how their relationships were. And it's kind of similar to Wafa's, because I do agree with what she's saying about the traditional way of having a relationship.
Yeah.
That's going to be my take on it.
Nice. So yes, for those of you who don't know, Edward is married to one of our brethren in the UK, Charlene Fowler. So yes, and yeah. So yes, I'm very interested to hear from Edward and get a male's take on things. It's always good. Samuel.
Yes, I think I'm
Yes.
gonna be the guy that kind of just talks about, relationships from a very single person's perspective, I guess. But one of the things that I've come to learn sort of, through my own growth and personal development is key word that Wafa mentioned about effective communication and what that looks like. I think it's so fundamental. In addition to being really like intentional about, getting into any sort of relationship, whether that's, family relationships, and redefining sometimes what that looks like. Because growing up, I've got like brothers and sisters and all that. But for me, understanding that relationships are just broader than just, male and female partnerships. There's so many different types of relationships that you have with your parents, the relationships that you have with your friends, relationships that you have, with your co-workers. All of that is predicated and based on your communication and how you show up in that space. And so really looking at how we communicate effectively with one another in those arenas, and how we can redefine our relationships as well. So I'm really excited kind of,
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I like that. Thank you, Samuel, about, the point about redefining our relationships. We're born into relationships. A child is born and there's already a relationship with its mother. Okay. You have your brothers, your sisters, you don't choose. Okay. And then you come into the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries and you don't choose these relationships. These are just the people that you're faced with most of the time, right? And then you're just getting on with you every day. You're not thinking about the relationship. You're simply in a relationship. And oftentimes when we do choose friends or partners, it'll be a useful conversation to talk about, what are we thinking when we enter into those relationships? Are we consciously thinking about, we're entering into a relationship, or are we just entering into a relationship without thinking about that? Do you see what I mean?
That's the already existing context, right? Like you said, you're kind of born into it. When you come into the nation, you kind of come into it. You come into, you kind of say, almost looking at it like a video, right? That's on record, and it's going, and you just like watch it, or you enter into it at a certain point in time. But there was a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, and you just enter into this like segue at a point in time. So it's almost redefining. Okay, well, what works for me in this scenario? Whether it be within the nation, outside the nation. Personal relationships, work relationships, whatever.
Yes, excellent. Okay, guys, so we want to look at the foundation of creating a healthy relationship. So what's the foundation of creating a healthy relationship? We'll bring up the first slide, producer. These are just three of what they have said are the three main components to a healthy relationship. Now, I'm sure we're going to come up with more, but we have on the screen here three core components of a healthy relationship. Number one, mutual respect. 2, mutual trust. 3, mutual affection. What are your thoughts on that, panel?
Can I say something? I think before we even start with looking into all of that, you have to first have an understanding of yourself, and you need to know what are your morals and your values. Because if you don't, I always think if you don't know what you want or what you're about, then you are going to just connect with anything and anyone. But I think understanding what your values are is so important. If you are meeting someone that says, look, I'm not interested in religion, but you're someone that is, Israel is your life, you're going to have to think about which one, because it's going to come and haunt you. Maybe the first couple of years is honeymoon period, but after a while it's going to come and haunt you. So there's certain things that you don't compromise with, because that's if your values and your morals are the center of your peace, and you start getting rid of that and you give it away, and that takes away from who you are. So I think understanding yourself before you even get yourself into a relationship, knowing what you what you need as well, because as a woman, you need to understand what you need and what you also bring to the table. Because as women, if we just go into anything without being consciously aware of what we're doing, it's going to be a disaster. There's no structure, there's no foundation. It's just a waste of time. And as women, I feel like, because obviously as a woman, men got more time than us. As women, we're not looking to be, we're limited for time, as when it comes to like conceiving and all of that stuff, building a family and everything. So you are limited for time. So do you really want to waste your time and trying to figure out what's out there? Or why don't you start with working on your foundation, understanding yourself? Because once you understand yourself, then you can have it. Then you can have that you can communicate that to the other person, and that's how I feel like.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Wafa. That's why I love to speak to you. I mean, before we even go there, she said, you need to know yourself. And that is so, so essential. And something that many of us are not taught, to have an understanding and knowledge of who we are, what we want, what we can contribute and or bring into a relationship. As you said, what are your morals and your values, and what are those things that you cannot compromise? What are those things that you cannot compromise? And I love the point that you made about the fact that if you're religious, can you enter into a relationship with somebody, or a romantic relationship with somebody who's not religious? How will that make sense?
Well, the short answer to that question is yes, you could. Yes, the long of it is it going to work out, right?
That's it.
But it's like, at the end of the day, like, my take on that is, as a man, like, you have, like you said, Wafa, kind of different considerations. Men and women have different things kind of going on, different timelines, if you will. So, from that perspective, yeah, you can. But I guess it comes back to your point about, what are your values, and, what are the things that, really matter to you. And if you are somebody who is religious and somebody who, follows after like the law, statutes, commandments, and you go out with somebody who doesn't, then you're kind of going to be going left or going right, and the other person's going left. And so how can two walk together unless they agree, right? That's what it says in the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be an element of, what I consider to be intentionality when you get into these, relationships. And a basis for that is, for me, like, having friendship. Friendship needs to be at the core of this. I know there was mutual respect, there was mutual trust. I can't remember the third one, mutual affection. That's all great. But if you're looking to pursue a romantic, relationship, I think the basis of that has to be friendship as well, right?
Yeah.
A bit of fun, a bit of humor, a bit of joy, all that.
I'd say these are qualities that you look for, isn't it, Samuel? I would say these are qualities.
For me, I can't speak for everyone else.
Yeah, I think we all strive for that, because when you build a life with someone, you don't just want it to be 24/7 serious. You want to have all these components. You want to enjoy that. But I think what I was referring to as well is that you need to understand your morals and values, because what a lot of people tend to do when they meet someone, they are hopeful, or they look for the person's potential. But sometimes what's in front of you have to either accept what's in front of you and not worry about, maybe in future I can change that. And we don't accept people for who they are sometimes. And sometimes we create thoughts in our head, and like, we hope, with time I can show them, I will convince them. But if a person says to you, look, I'm an atheist, I'm not interested in religion, you can't. I feel like a lot of people are, they're stuck on the potential of that person and not accept the person for who they are. So then you need to understand your morals and values, because you need to lay that on the table. And the same thing, the person has to also be able to say, you know what, this is for me, or this is not for me. I can work with this, or I can't work with this,
Yeah, so true.
Yeah. Some great points there.
The thing is, I just wanted to add, you established that from the beginning though, right? So for me, for example, in my personal relationship with my partner, at the beginning, she made it known to me what she is, that she's an Israelite. And it was up to me, ultimately, to either carry on getting to know her at the courting stage or to just leave her be, right? So it took about, I'll say, 2 years for me to do my own research, find out what the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries is about. And then once I clarified that that was what I wanted to go into with her, then I decided to, take the step and become a Israelite myself. But for me, I feel I wasn't religious per se before meeting her. I wasn't attending church every Sunday religiously and, going to all Christian festivities religiously and stuff. But for me, it's a thing where I found Israel to be more of a culture as opposed to a religion. So that's what helped me to come in a bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Nice, Edward. Nice. We remember Edward coming in. I think if the UK branch will have a laugh about, Edward used to sit in the car waiting for Charlene for like 2 hours. We'd be all in there worshiping and he'd be out there. Her ride would be out there. He'd be waiting. And
it takes a lot of patience.
And because of that, we're like, Charlene, that's the one. He's the one.
Can I also add what Edward said? I think isn't that such an attractive quality to have when a woman knows her worth and knows what she needs in her life? I think a man then only learns to respect you when you show that. A man can't respect you. A lot of women expect men to respect them, but respect is earned. And sometimes a person doesn't know you enough to kind of learn how to respect you. But if you're someone that's firm and, grounded in what you want and say, look, there's no alternatives. This is what I am about. This is what I can work with. Obviously, relationships requires compromising and everything, but that will come with time. But these are my foundations. You either take it or leave it. And I think as growing up as well, in my culture, we really didn't have the opportunity to date. There's nothing that's like going out there and dating different people to get to know one another. But our parents taught us our foundation. So when a man comes and says, I'm interested in your daughter, my family will do the research to understand, okay, is he in line with what we've raised our child to be? If he's someone that's going to take what we've raised our child to be, then we're not interested, because obviously I didn't have the opportunity in the first place where I'm allowed to go date and know.
You didn't have the courting stage, basically.
Yeah.
So you had more of an arranged situation then.
Yeah, but then I got to experience both experiences where my parents had to choose who I was going to marry, and now I got to choose who I wanted to be in a relationship with. Mm-hmm. And I think this is where I felt a bit confused because there were so many mixed signals, mixed messages. Obviously I don't want to go into it, but there's a lot of mixed messages, especially from women. So that's why there's not a lot of people that are interested in marriage anymore, because everything's available out there. You don't even need to work hard for it.
Yes. I think, as you say, you raised great points. The Western culture is much more open, isn't it? And you made a point about, when you're young, especially when you're young, I will say, you think you can change people. You think you can change somebody's ways, or you can adapt to their ways. Everything's so open. There's no kind of structure. There's no values, expectation. You're just going with this emotion of love, so they say.
Fantasize. I think there's a lot of
fantasize or lust or all of these things that are not reality, that will never really form the basis of a strong relationship. Yeah. And that's the Western world, right? It romanticizes everything. But those of us who have been in relationships, marriages, whatever, we know that it's a real partnership, and you've got to really focus on what the reality of any partnership is and what's going to form that partnership and keep it strong. And that's why you need those morals and those values. And I think that then brings us on to what you were saying, Wafa, about, different cultures where some people, such as yourself, didn't even have the courting stage. You had parents who would put you together, they'd research, find out about your family, find out about their family, and families would know what to expect from each other, and then put their children together, right? So it'd be based on maybe economics, based on the virtues in that family, the reputation of certain families and households, and then they'd match each other together that way.
Absolutely.
You then said taken from that, you have then been able to actually use some of that experience to look at what you want from your own mate and make your own evaluation.
Yeah.
So what is it that we want, and how important do we think it is to have our families involved in choosing our mate? Do we think that the relationship you have with your mate is just between you and your mate, or is it between you, your mate, and their family? What are your...
I think it's between. Sorry, I think it's between you, your mate, and the families. The thing is, with Amira's culture, for example,
her own culture.
families, like the families would get to know each other, and who knows you better than your immediate family, right? Your mom, your dad, they're the ones that raised you from birth. Do you know what I mean? So if they see a potential partner for you that maybe has also grown up the same way as you, attended functions, and they've seen that person grow up, that person's parents and family has also seen you grow up, it kind of makes it a perfect match. So, and also, like, if you're ever going through any relationship problems or whatever, you'll bring it to your family first and foremost, and take it outside, right? Yeah.
I love the point about, we're more or less talking about intentionally choosing your partner, or at least your family intentionally choosing your partner for you. So what I want us to do is just refer back to the scriptures now and look at what is the Israelite culture and what took place in the beginning, and how did our forefathers and mothers choose their mates. Okay, so I want to go to the book of Genesis, and if we could turn our Bibles, please, to Genesis 28. I love to start with this man. So we have Israel, whose surname, we have Jacob, whose surname became Israel. And I always want to look at Jacob's story because Jacob is the first Israelite man. So let's look at his story and what happened. So first of all, it is chapter 29, but let's just read the first two verses in Genesis chapter 8. So Genesis chapter 8, verse 1. Could one of you read that, please? We there?
Yeah, we're there.
Genesis chapter 8, verse 1.
Yes, please. 28, verse 1.
28, verse 1.
Yeah.
And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him, and charged him and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padanaram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother.
Thank you. One last verse.
And God Almighty bless thee, and make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, that thou mayest be multitude of people.
And give thee,
And give thee the blessings of Abraham to thee, and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham.
Thank you. Thanks, Samuel. So there sets the foundation. You have Isaac, okay, Jacob's dad, his father, giving him an instruction of where to go to take his wife. He's telling him what he should do and what he shouldn't do. So do not take of the daughters of Canaan, but go to your mother's father and take a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. So
that's intentional, right? Just going back to that point.
Yeah, that's
very intentional, like where to go.
Right. Where to go.
Who to speak to.
And what I want to point out there, guys, is, okay, he's gone more or less to his cousin. He's been directed to his cousin on his mother's side. And a lot of people will think, oh, gosh, all that incestual stuff. Okay. But you're talking about the early days of building this family. Yeah. The early days, Abraham has been chosen. He's got a covenant with the Most High God, the one true and living God. And Abraham has Isaac. Isaac is chosen, and Isaac got Jacob, and he's giving his son this instruction where to go, and he's saying, take of your mother's side of the family. This is what I love about Elder Shadrach's teaching, because what does Elder Shadrach tell us? Why would that work in such early days to build the family? Because Elder teaches us that the seed is from who? The seed, because the seed is from the man, okay? The man belongs to the child, right? So if he's taking of that side of the family, the mother side, it's not Abraham's side of the family. Do you understand? So a man could have child, it's still the same seed, even if it was with different women. It's still that same seed. So if he's planting a rose, he's planting a rose in whatever garden he plants that rose in. You know, he can never plant a lily.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there's this level of wisdom there saying, go to your mother's side, because it couldn't be his side. Did you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Genesis 29. Let's go from verse 1. Who can read? This is now, we're now going to be talking about Jacob, him following that actual instruction from his father, and when he goes to meet his wives. So who's going to read?
Okay, I'll read.
Thank you.
Then Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in his place. And Jacob said unto them, My brethren, whence be ye? And they said, Of Haran are we. And he said unto them, Know ye Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said unto them, Is he well? And they said, He is well. And behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. And
Okay,
said,
so do we know the story there? So they've gone out to look, and they've found that Laban, they're near, and that Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his cousin, is coming to where they are, that she's on her way. So they've just got confirmation. Okay. Read on.
Verse 7. And he said, Lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water ye the sheep, and go and feed them. And they said, We cannot, until all the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel, and lifted up his voice and wept.
Okay, do you want to stop there? Thank you, Edward. So he is now in contact with his mother's brother's daughter, Rachel. She is attending to the flock of her father, Laban. And he realizes that he's seen her, he's in her company and in her presence, and he, hugs her, kisses her, and he begins to cry because he's just there with his family. Okay. All right. Anything else to add, guys, before we read on? No? Read on then. Okay.
Oh, I need to say that you must be very, very happy to have done all this.
Yeah, you don't know how long that journey was as well. Right, those journeys, they take time, and he's actually, he's considering his father, Isaac, and now he's actually, met Rachel, his mother's side of the family. So it's probably really, really happy.
Yeah, following that instruction.
Okay. Thanks, Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 12.
Yeah. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father.
Read on.
And it came to pass, when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, and embraced him, and kissed him, and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things.
Okay.
And Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month.
Okay, so they've caught up. You know, Laban is seeing his sister's son, Jacob. They're all excited. He's, Jacob has said, I've come to find you. My dad sent me to this side of the family to catch up with you. I'm happy to be with you. And he's like, yeah, we're family, we're flesh of flesh. Stay here for a month. Stay with me. So that's how that goes. Verse 14.
And Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. And Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob loved Rachel, and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee, than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had to her.
Thank you. Can we stop there? I love that. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and the scripture said it only appeared to be a few days because of the love that he had for her.
Wow.
That is really deep.
Yeah,
that's really deep, because it's like he waited 7 years. 7 years is not no small amount of time.
No.
But it felt like it passed by so quickly because of the love he had for her. His love was so much. So it just felt like time flew by.
I feel like he was so focused because he wanted her. He was, he was so focused. So I guess that 7 years flew by so quick.
Yeah. And the fact it was 7 years, if you guys just saw the Saturday's lesson that I was just a part of, we talked about, 7 meaning completion and perfection. And it's so interesting that here you can see that the first Israelite man served 7 years, a full cycle for the wife that he wanted to have. It's amazing. And it felt but a few days. It felt like a few days.
That's what happens, right, when you're in love, right?
When you're in love, you do things like the pain doesn't feel like pain, or hardship doesn't feel like hardship, And they say when a man loves, he loves so deep, and he will give you the world. Basically, that's what they say usually.
But this is half the story, because we all know what's going to come next.
This is a great story, but it's a great start, because this is what sets a foundation to the Israelite culture. When you're talking about relationships, you're talking about choosing and intent. He listened to the instructions of his father, Isaac. He did exactly what he was told to do. Not only this, the wisdom that Isaac had in saying, go to your mother's brother Laban and take a wife from there. He loved Rachel, like he fell in love with her, so it wasn't even, oh my goodness, is this what I need to? He saw someone that he really was attracted to and had feelings for, so it's a lovely story. But we can read on, because I want to read on. Do you want to read on, guys?
Yeah. I think one of the things, just to kind of like point, is earlier we talked about, like, is it family that kind of gets to choose, and part of our culture. And I think reading this, it's hard reading for what happens next, right? I feel like the younger generation today, like, this is a real, like, it's a real eye-opener to see, okay, well, this is what life was like, right? And look how good we have it today. Look how good we have it now.
Yes.
But is there that wisdom that gets lost because we are so fixated on this Western culture of, you know, we're able to get whatever we want at the drop of the hat, this instant kind of gratification. So I love the fact that, you know, we highlight the 7 years, and that is a process of time, right? That he went through. So just to bear that in mind as we continue reading, but there is a bit of a kind of catch, but we'll get to that.
Well, let's get the catch, because, you know, don't forget you teach our little young boys here in the UK, Samuel. So I'd like to know what you're going to take from this and teach them.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's read on then. Okay.
From verse 21. And Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to him. And he went in unto her. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah, his maid, for an handmaid. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? And Laban said, it must not be so done in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. And Jacob did so.
Can I add something? Actually, that's so common in my culture that even if I couldn't get married, if my older sister is there and she's not married, the younger one cannot go off and get married. You have to have that respect. The older has to go first, and then the one after that. And so I remember,
right? It has to go in order,
yeah.
What culture is it? When you say what culture is it?
It was like so like the Arab culture. So it's, you know, the Yemeni culture. You can't, you know, people talk in my culture. So obviously in that time, people will talk. Oh, no one wants the older one. So you have to let the older one go first, and the younger one can't go before. And there's been occasions where the younger one actually found love and found someone to actually want to get married, and she's ready to get married, but marriage does not go ahead until the older one is gone, and then the younger one will come. I love this.
Yeah, but I with that one, I'm going to say, number one, they take from the Israelite culture. Everybody takes out of this Bible. They take, so they've taken from our Bible. But what I would say, because it, you know, it has been Israelite culture for it to be that way. This is like, what can I say? I don't think the culture was necessarily there set in stone necessarily for Jacob, because I think Jacob is authentic in the sense that the Israelite culture can only be built through him. But obviously for Laban, it was already a part of his culture. And that's what you said. You can't take, you know, you can't take the younger before the older. But he never told him that in the first place, did he? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
He never told that in the first place. But what I do like about that is there's a level of the father looking out for all his children and thinking about how they're going to be taken care of. And he's seeing a level of value in Jacob. He's seeing a lot of virtue. Like, this is a good man. He's labored for me for 7 years. But actually, you know what? I need to think about my daughter. And you know what? I'm not letting one be left behind. So you know what? I'm going to try him now. He's going to have to work another 7 years for my other one. So what's your thoughts on that, Samuel?
Oh, that's a hard man, right? It's a hard man. But it also shows like the love that a man has for a woman, right? That he would literally like go through almost hell.
It's a sacrifice.
14 years. It's a massive sacrifice, right? Massive sacrifice for him to be, you know, like he said in his word, beguiled. Like they had an agreement, they had a contract that was broken. I'm looking at it from Jacob's perspective, right?
Yes.
But also the great humility, right, that he must have showed and exhibited to be able to say, you know what, despite all of this, I'm still going to work for her. I'm still going to, pursue her. I'm still going to work another 7 years. I don't know, like in this day and age, if this is happening, like most guys are like, I'm done. I'm out, sort of.
Yeah, people would have walked out a long time ago.
You have your tender-eyed daughter back, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
But not you, isn't it, Edward? Edward, not you.
Oh,
you
no.
sit in the car for 2 hours, so you might have done the 14 years. What do you think?
that's why at the beginning I said it takes a lot of patience, and with me, I don't know. I'm quite a laid-back person. I've got quite a lot of patience.
Right.
This ain't to blow my own trumpet or anything like that, but it takes a lot of patience. Like Jacob done 14 years. 14 years is a damn long time. I didn't do anything like that, and I don't know if I could. I might have to be in the situation to know how I'd handle it, obviously. But God take my hat off to him, because that is not easy.
Yeah.
But if a woman is worth, if a woman is worth it, would you not have done? Because if you know the woman that you're going to connect with and build a life with is full of value, like she brings it, she's full of goodness. Isn't that something worthy of going out there and kind of doing?
It goes back to your point, right? It goes back to your point that you were talking about, like in today's society, like are women of how are they virtuous? And I guess like you will come across some that are, and you will come across some that aren't. And I guess off the basis of that, you'll then be able to decide whether the 14 years and a day is something you wanna do or not as a guy. But yeah, I think also we have to be like really clear about what are the things that we want for ourselves, and I think that's also something. Jacob, I can imagine he grew up with his father Abraham, Isaac, knowing the laws, the statutes, the commandments, following in a certain way. He could see worth, he could see the value that Rebecca had, and I think for him, in the grand scheme of things, the 14 years was nothing if he was going to spend the rest of his life with her, 30, 40 years, 50 years, so it was as a few days. So, maybe it was just a few more days for him to then be reunited with the love of his life.
It really tests your loyalty as well.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's something we need to bring back, that kind of understanding. I think, kind of gets lost along the way. And I think we'll probably touch on that in terms of like.
Well, for those of you who want to bring that back, for you ladies who want to bring that back, put up some fire signs in the chat and let the men.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Yeah. I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks, to be honest. It would be quite interesting.
It's enticing, you know what I mean? It's very like enticing.
Can I also add, I think there was a point you made earlier, Minister Charmaine, about families coming together. I think something my mum always said to me, a woman brings a whole community together. A woman literally will give birth, and she will connect the husband's side of the family and the girl's side of the family. They will connect. And it's so important, because you need to know who you are connecting with, where you're coming from. You need to understand, because it's not just about you and me. It's about your side of the family, because they say, if when people get divorced, it's not only you two getting divorced. It's not just the children going to do 2 different homes. That's a community. That's a village that's breaking. You have to take it so serious, because it's not going to affect only 2 people. It affects a lot more people, and we don't understand how deep that is. We think, oh, okay, just because it's me and you, we're not happy. It's that's it. No, it affects families. Go against each other. War. All these kind of.
You're absolutely right, and I think then it goes back to making sure that we go into these things right, because I think we
have to be conscious.
We're not consciously always choosing our relationships. We're not always thinking about what we're doing and the impact. We go into these things, people have children, they're not planning the children, they're not thinking about the future, they're just doing it. And then the consequences later when actually that's not going to work. And that's not a judgment. That's not a judgment to any woman, male or whatever, because sometimes, unfortunately, you have to look at the bigger picture and how the relationship's having an impact on the wider family, because if that is a very unhealthy relationship, that can also have an impact on everybody else around as well. So it's vice versa, whether you stay or whether you leave. Of course, the big D word is not something we would encourage. However, each consequence or each situation is each situation that needs to be looked at separately.
A lot of people go. A lot of people go with the flow.
Oh, that's okay.
It can't be divorce.
Divorce word. We're gonna get in trouble here.
The divorce should ultimately be the last resort, right?
Of course.
It should be the last resort.
Yes, because ideally it shouldn't even happen at all. We know that ideally it should not even happen at all. But, Moses put that in there because he knows of our stiff-necked hearts and, potentially poor behaviors. So, All right, let's get to the end of these scriptures, guys. So verse 28, let's just read on. We want to read.
I'll read. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel his daughter to wife also. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served him yet 7 other years. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, Surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, Because the Lord hath heard I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, Now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name called Levi. And she conceived again and bare a son. And she said, Now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing.
Wow. So you look at how the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel, had considered this situation, and how he's considered even Leah's heart and her feelings, knowing that she was not the sister who was favored, knowing it was Rachel. So Rachel also then had to feel some pain, because it was like, well, this man loves you, but you're barren. You can't have his children. I'm going to let your sister have his children. And, the sister was like, well, maybe he'll love me now. Maybe he'll love me now, It's so interesting how the 12 tribes of Israel was constructed, how that family came together. You've got 2 sisters. And oftentimes, for women, when you're with a man, you're going to end up loving that man, because you've had that interaction with that man. You're going to love that man, especially if you're having children for him, and there you have it. So how was Rachel? It says in verse 30, and when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel began to envy her sister, and said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. So she's angry. She's up like, what's the point of me being married, wedded to you, and I can't even have your children, the man that I love? You know what I mean? And Jacob became very angry in verse 2. He says his anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in God's stead? Am I God who have withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And so she gave him her maid, Bilhah. So if producer, if you could put up the family tree onto the screen so we can see how the 12 tribes of Israel came up. Have you got it there, the family tree? Just so that we can see Reuben, Simeon, Levi. So there we have the lineage of Abraham, okay? So we've got, if we go down to Isaac, Rebecca, then if you go to Jacob, so as you can see there, you can see Leah had the most children, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah. And Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin. And then you can see Zilpah was the maid, and Bilhah was also one of the maids. So in Israelite culture, the women would have a maid that would serve them and help them to raise their children. So oftentimes when women couldn't bear children anymore, they'd get their maid to bear the child for them. And so that's the lineage. What are your thoughts on that, guys, and on this story and how this came together?
Well, it raises some interesting topics around. I have more than one wife. But it does raise like a very interesting like dynamic around just seeing how the God of Israel almost reaffirms the kind of order of everything. You know, the fact that Leah, you know, she was the eldest, but she wasn't loved the way that Rebecca was loved and taken, you know, forward, and then him kind of opening up her womb almost to kind of show, you know, Jacob that, you know, he should love his wife at the end of the day, because that's who she is, you know. Okay, she was his wife by, you know, deceit.
Deceit. Yeah.
By you know, Laban's hoodwinking of Jacob and basically getting him, you know, to serve him for 7 years. I mean, any man would be but he had his eye on the prize, right? That's what I love the story. He had his eye on the prize. He didn't allow that to deter him. But let's be real. At the end of the day, Jacob, you know, has been sent by his father to come to, you know, his mother's father's family and pick a wife to grow a nation, right? And we know the nation that came out of this. So for me, this is all like kind of small detail, but how do we take this and apply it to our lives is the question.
Well, let me tell you, and good points, really good points. What I see here, guys, is the word called responsibility, because Jacob, they were his wives, and he was responsible for his wives. He never necessarily did away with them, you know. I think emotions are emotions. If he loves one wife, that's his feelings. But as long as he's still having that responsibility and making sure he's providing for those children exactly the same way and taking care of that woman who is the other women who became his wife or concubines, however you want to say it, because I'm sure the maidens became like concubines. But that's what it is. It's about responsibility and looking at the bigger picture and how I'm going to build this family, because they're all his children, right? And they are the mothers of his children. And they would then effectively have to have lived well together, raising these children as a community, as a family. These sisters, you know, had to raise each other's children. And that's what I'm seeing, is sometimes we have to put our mature hat on and be like, okay, this is bigger than me. As we said, it's not just about me and you, Rachel and Jacob. It's about the bigger picture now. So for me, it's a lot about responsibility and living up to what your responsibilities are, and ensuring that is always upkept. That's
so remember, like the whole topic is like about relationships, right? So there are just so many like different relationships kind of going on. The relationship between Jacob and Leah, which wasn't going so great, but she's the one that's favored and bears some children.
But it might have been fine. Samuel, even think about it like this. It doesn't mean that Jacob didn't get along with Leah. It just means he didn't have those kind of feelings for her. He may have showed her a lot of respect, gave her time, was courteous to her, provided for her. She probably knew he's a good man, but he just didn't have those butterfly feelings, whatever that is, as he had for Rachel. So it doesn't, I mean, people are looking at him like he's such a bad man because, he didn't love her. But did he respect her?
Mhm.
That's what you need to look at. Did he treat her with respect? But there's nothing in the scriptures to say that he didn't. Do you see what I mean?
I'm sure.
That's a fair
If
point.
we
Fair
could,
comment. Fair comment.
I'm sure
Fair
if we could
comment.
ask him,
There's
he'll.
also really. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, sorry. I was going to say, I'm sure if we could ask him, he would say there's different qualities in both of them.
Yes.
But that's the thing about the whole our forefathers with the multiple wives thing or whatever. Is they each, I'm sure they each had different qualities and values that they loved, and they all learned to live in unison as well.
Mhm.
You know?
And if you look at it, okay, Laban, there was a little bit of deceit with Laban, but the sisters, Leah and Rachel, gave gave the maids onto the husband. So they allowed their husbands to be with their maids so that they could build this family. This is a choice. This is nothing hidden. This is something that they chose to do. They were in control. They had authority over their maids, right? And this is what they chose to do. So they to some extent chose this situation because they wanted those children with this man.
I think those are strong women back then as well, because it shows a lot of humility. What women do you know these days in the Western world that would share their man?
But you know what? Can I add to this? I think that is actually, it does happen. But if a man is doing what he's supposed to do in the relationship and fulfilling his role towards the woman, then as long as he's not slacking in what he's supposed to do, then, I think this is something. I know people don't like these type of topics and and things like that, but it does happen. And I think a man that knows that, you know what, I haven't deprived you of my love and attention. I haven't, you're not lacking in anything. I've been here. I've been supporting you. I've been the lead, like the head of the family. I've been in control of so many situations. Managing the finance and doing what he's supposed to do. I think women, because they don't feel like they're missing out on anything, you're giving me everything. I'm just talking about from what I witnessed. And I always wondered how the Muslim women were comfortable to allow a man to have another wife. And I remember there was someone that said it's because as long the man can't just go and get another woman. That's what breaks a woman's heart. If he's doing what he's supposed to do in the relationship, then there's nothing for you to complain about. If you're able to say, well, you're slacking here, you're slacking there, you're not giving me what I need, then there's an issue. He can't go take care of another woman because he's already not even doing what he's supposed to do in the first place.
Even manage the one, and that's the whole thing. How you keep the one?
Can you manage?
And out in the world, there are many women I've known come across who would say, as long as their man is doing what they need him to do, they don't care what he's doing outside. There's many women who have that frame of mind. Loads of women. There's also many women who don't necessarily want to be the wife, who are happy to be on the sideline so long as they're getting what they need on the sideline. So if you look at a lot of things, are communication and an agreement. If there's a communication and an agreement and an understanding, then
you have to know what you're signing up for. That's what I said, morals and values. You need to know what you're signing up for. Can you work with that? Will that break you? If you know you're someone, don't be in a like La La Land where you're dreaming and thinking maybe I can change his mind in future. You need to know what there was a saying my mom said to me once. My mom said to me, a woman can love one man at a time. Her heart has got a space only to love one man. Whereas a man can love more than one woman at the same time. And I used to say, what? But it makes sense. I wondered, how can a man be with so many women and still love each one and have that, that love for each woman,
Is
that true, Edward?
Is that true?
Is that true?
I agree.
You're not allowed to say.
I agree with it too.
Be careful, Edward.
I know. This goes back to what I was saying though about there's different qualities in each woman for him. Right. You know what I mean? With these days and the Western world and the culture we're growing up in now and the youth growing up today, it's like what Amira was saying earlier. If the man's doing everything he's supposed to do, the woman technically shouldn't have a problem with him bringing another woman in. It can be a help to his wife, and then he'll have two wives or whatever, and they both, play their role as the wives, and he still carries on doing what he's supposed to do, looking after the household, the children that he, brings forth with them and whatnot. That sounds like a dream world in today's society, right? honestly, but it can work. It all depends on the individuals involved in the party. There's got to be understanding. There's got to be quite a lot of humility, I reckon, with the women as well, because some women would sort of feel like, okay, my man does do everything he's supposed to do for me in our relationship, but if another woman comes in, maybe his eyes will drift away from me and start focusing more on that woman and the children that he has with that woman. That's when things start to crumble.
I think for a woman, as a woman, when even it's like, what does a woman, okay, I can only speak on as a female, as a woman, what does a woman want from a relationship in order for her to feel safe and secure? So for us women, we need security, and that is emotional security, and that is financial security. That's the certain needs to be fulfilled in a relationship. And in order for a relationship to be for a relationship to be a healthy relationship. And like you said, Edward, like obviously a woman might fear, what if another woman comes in and takes that? Of course you're gonna, it's not easy to give away the person you love or to share the one you love with someone else. And as women, we're quite protective. Once we have something good, we will hold on to it. We will fight for it. We will compromise. We will sacrifice. We will give you everything you need in order for us to keep that, But I think as well that's when a man has to be smart and understand. A woman is a very emotional kind of human being, and he has to kind of, you can't show, if you have two wives, you can't give that wife a gift and not give your first wife a gift, or maybe let them know where they stand and say, okay, this day is with you, this day is with that, because it happens. I'm saying it because I've seen it, I've witnessed it, and a lot of the times two women actually share the role. They actually, there's less responsibilities because they help each other. Not to say I'm a fan of it. It's a no for me.
It's a no for me.
But I think since I was young, that's something that's been put in us, implemented into us, but we learn to understand, why does it happen? Why? What's the importance of it? And as a woman, a woman needs to learn how to conduct herself in the relationship. And sometimes I feel like if you're doing what you're supposed to do in the relationship, I think some men can't control it. They will look, but a man is less likely to look because he's got everything he wants in his kingdom. If a man gets, especially in today's society, if a man is receiving, the man will know the risk it will take if he even dares to go out there and does what he needs to do. He's going to lose a lot more than what he's going to gain.
You're talking there much about being a virtuous woman, and what qualities a woman is to bring into a relationship to more or less make her understand what that loss would look like, if you was to move on. But I think I'm going to change the direction slightly. But what I do want to take from this conversation, from what I can see, we're not saying or encouraging men to have many wives. We're looking at the purpose in this time with Jacob. He didn't necessarily choose that for himself. Let's get it straight. He never made that choice for himself. The circumstances just became that way. So he didn't choose that, right? It became that way. But when it became that way for him, he took on board the responsibilities that came with having more than one wife. That's what he did. So he always said he wanted Rachel. He loved Rachel. He never diverted from that. But then when he had to take on the sister and the maids that came with it, he did what he needed to do, and it was open. And so there's a level of responsibility, accountability, and he played his role, and he served and worked really hard even to get Rachel. In one sense, thank Rachel, because Leah wouldn't have been able to, if you weren't aiming for Rachel, Leah wouldn't even have been in the picture. But I'm just saying. Just saying. But anyways,
he is a good example. I would say he is a good example of a husband man. Someone who is taking on, like you say, that responsibility and building, a kind of nation almost. You know, and with the help should I say, or guidance of the God of Israel.
Amen.
To be able to do that. So that's something that I take from that. Despite the situation, the circumstances, there's always something that we can learn from this whole situation. I think that for me is just the tea.
It's wonderful. And let me tell you what I take from that, which is not written: the virtuous man. We hear about the virtuous woman, and we'll talk about that. Virtue is your behavior and how you conduct yourself. Exactly everything that's just being discussed. That's your virtue, how you behave, how you conduct yourself, what your morals are, what your ethics are. Jacob was a virtuous man. It's not written in the Bible about there being a virtuous man, but his behavior, his ethics, his moral, he still stuck to his word. He served for his wife. He provided. That standard of a man, where was the blame in him? Even when he was frustrated with his, father-in-law, he still was he was still humble. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, that's his father-in-law, and he still was humble. And at the end, yes, we know he got annoyed and he went off and he took the flock and everything, but he worked for all the flock and everything. The God of Israel blessed Laban's economically, his farm, whatever it was in those days, because Jacob was blessed. And Laban saw that. If you read the scripture, he saw how blessed Jacob was and why he was prospering. It was because Jacob was there. Jacob left at the end and took what was his and moved on. Right, we're a little bit short for time, but I'm just going to move the dynamic a little bit before we kind of wrap up and look at the virtuous woman and look at the virtues. But we talked about there being
I just want to say one thing before you move on. Sorry, it's the final point. And the point is that, in today's society, like, these conversations are so necessary. Like, it's so important that, the young people kind of hear this and they get an understanding of, what it is that we're talking about. Because if there isn't somebody to teach them these things and show them these examples, then where are they going to get it from? So that's also something that we have to really bear in mind, for the next generation, so that they know what a virtuous man, what a virtuous woman looks like.
Yes.
All of the headwinds that Jacob had thrown his way, but still managing to keep his integrity, keep his word intact. Like, that's something to be commended. And I think as men, it's something that we need to talk more about, and share, because there's a lot of chat sometimes that, men don't do this, or men aren't like that, and a lot of blame. And that's not effective communication. That's not communication that's going to make the boat go faster. It's not going to take us anywhere of any value of importance. So, these are the conversations that I think are helpful, that show, our history, our culture, warts and all. But the lessons that we get from that are so important to take and to apply. So that's the part I wanted to just say before we crack on.
A really good point. Thank you for sharing, because I completely agree with you. So moving on and shifting it just slightly, talking about agreement and covenant. We're talking about when we go into a relationship, being intentional and kind of really thinking that through, because that might take us a lot further than, decisions that we might make in our youth when we think we can change someone, when it's just all about this romanticizing. Oh, he looks good, he's paying me attention, vice versa, she looks good, but you don't know nothing about her value, her culture. We don't know anything about each other. But even the God of Israel, and even when he chose Abraham, it was intentional. He did his homework. He tried and he tested, even before he went into that covenant with that man to say, right, I'm going to establish my nation through you. He walked with Abraham. He looked to see what kind of a man that was before he made that covenant. And then he made an agreement. Do you see what I mean? One of the things that we don't consider is that Abraham showed his faith first. Before the God of Israel gave any law, statute, or commandments and told Abraham how to live, he was able to see that man's faith, even when he was asked to, sacrifice his own son, and how he was just willing to do that. A lot of people think Israel didn't have faith. Faith came before the law. It was like,
even before that, Minister Charmaine. Even before that, heard a voice saying to, get thee up out of your father's house and come follow me, right? Like, you just heard a voice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, imagine would any of you do that? Just hear a voice, get up and just like follow, like, and not only that, it goes to show the kind of character that he was, to be able to get, you know, his nephew Lot to kind of follow, and his wife as well to come along. Because, you know, if we were looking at it in today's society, and like Edward, for example, if you said, "Oh, I heard a voice," do you think Charlie would be like, "Okay, I'm coming with you"?
No.
You're paranoid.
There'll be so much questions asked beforehand. Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe there were questions asked. We don't know. The story doesn't detail that. But what we do know is that, you know, through it all, she picked up and came and went with him. So, you know, it kind of goes to show, like saying, the man.
That's it. And what was that? What was that? Was that a love Abraham had for this one true and living God, that you would leave your father's house for an unseen God? You know, his father wasn't without, you know, I'm sure they lived a decent, good life, and he's safe. You know, you went to a world of uncertainty with a God that you can't see, you can hear, to go and build a life. Do you see what I mean? Like, you listened, you were obedient, and then he said to sacrifice your son for me. What love was that? What inner man was that? What came out? What was inside of that person, you know, for him to have that affection to the one true and living God, to serve him? And the God of Israel saw that, and then he established that man, because of whatever those feelings, whatever that obedience, those emotions that came with it. Do you see what I mean? So even that relationship was somewhat tried and seen, and almost Abraham was watched before the God of Israel made any agreement with him. Okay.
Humility just like screams out at me, like as you're talking, he's just a humble guy.
Just a humble guy. And then the God of Israel was like, I'm going to give you everything. I have seen your heart. I have seen how you would just be obedient to me, how you will serve me, how you will move from your family and follow me. I am going to make you the father of many nations. What do you see what I mean? Anyway, let's go to Genesis 17. And this is, you know, a relationship between a father and a son, a God and a man, you know, and it's very, very important that we look at it. So Genesis chapter 17, we don't have much time, so we're going to probably touch on this much quicker. What time do we have? 15 left. Okay, so let's read from Genesis chapter 17, verse 1. Okay. And when Abraham was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram, and said unto him, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou perfect. Does anybody else want to read?
Yeah. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abraham fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations out of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised.
Yeah, so we can stop there. Yeah. So there was an agreement between Abraham and the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob, between the Almighty God and Abraham. There was an agreement. He entered into a relationship. There was a covenant and an agreement and an understanding. This is how we are going to lay the foundation. this is going to be the foundation of our relationship. And this is what we're going to teach generation after generation. So when you're talking about values, morals, ethics, they were all established through the law. They were all established through the law and culture. Okay. Every family would do well if we established a covenant and agreement, not just going to, oh, I'm getting married and I'm going to wear my big white dress and I'm going to have my big ring and I'm going to look beautiful. And yeah, he's going to say, I love you forevermore. But what really, how does your household run? What is your family dynamic? What is that value? What's it going to look like? Because people do say, look, the reality of a marriage is a partnership. In today, you've got to pay the bills. That's a lot of pressure. Keeping the roof over your head, that takes a lot of your time. That takes away a lot of romance. I mean, do you have time for romance, Edward, at home when you're working all those hours? Charlene's got the little baby screaming and she's frustrated and she's angry. Edward, help me out. Why are you sleeping? All of that real drama, right?
It's not easy.
It's not easy. Where's that wife that you love? No, she's a upset mother because she's got this baby and then you're trying to pay the bills and you're tired. And then you've got pressure from the school, your other children is doing some, listen, what's the reality? So when you're dealing with all of those things, you're dealing with real life. What's your foundation? What's your ethic? What's both of your morals? What's your agreement in the way in which you raise your children, in the way that you manage your household? What are the things that should never happen in your household? Are we having those conversations?
With the boundaries, what are the boundaries that's being set?
What are the boundaries? And we're not always doing that. And they were saying, oh, but you're not taking me out. You used to take me out before. And me, I say that. You ain't taking me out. But you ain't taking me out. You ain't doing this. Okay, what's the boundary? Okay, can we do it once a week now then? What's the agreement, guys? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would call it terms of reference.
Right.
Boundaries to me, they kind of like restricting and they're like, whereas if there's terms of reference, we have a playbook almost of, okay, this is how we're going to operate. This is what we're going to do. These are the things that we're not going to do. And we're going to respect, each other, within those boundaries. Okay, I'm not going to take away what Amira said. But I think ultimately it comes down to having that effective communication. It comes down to that humility as well, to know that okay, we're working, we're trying our best, we're doing what we can, with the tools that we have, and appreciating that we're not always going to get it right. Appreciating that there are going to be disagreements. So what's the terms of reference for how we disagree with each other?
I think
disagree, but let's actually have a way to a process to disagree. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think a review every now and then, like every 2-3 months, because as individuals, we change as time passes. Our needs change.
Yes.
What we want in a relationship, you might give us what we need now, but as time passes now, our needs changes. So checking in with one another. Where are we? Are you satisfied here? Are you good? Are you happy? Because sometimes, and I think the term happy is quite, I don't like to use the word happy because you're not going to be happy in every situation, but content. Are we content? Are we appreciating what the other person's bringing to the table? And checking in is so important. And I feel like a lot of the time, because people are so busy, they don't have that time. And I would like to also add another thing that I feel like affects relationships in general. And I always said this now, a lot of people, say husband and wife, a husband will wake up in the morning. That also applies to the wife. A husband will wake up in the morning, gets himself ready, and goes and deals with the world out there. Now, the husband represents his positive, happy self, and he's offering so much energy to the world. But when he comes home, he's offering a drained, tired, exhausted, moaning. And that's what the wife receives. So you need to understand as well, what were you offering in the first place that made this relationship strong? Are we slacking from our end? And sometimes we do slack, but there's a reason why. Let's check in again. That's why I think checking in with one another is so important. Effective communication to make sure there's an understanding, So I think
I just want to say one point, because we've
very
been talking
good
about
point. Very good.
Communication.
Yes.
Effective communication and what does that actually look like? I mean, for me, And I think for most people, when they actually take the time to actually consider what works is, you know, sometimes when we're in a relationship, and it could be any relationship, you know, parents, work, your partner, whoever it is, are you actually present and are you actually listening to them, or are you actually in your head thinking about what I'm going to say
responding.
to them?
Responding
Before
back.
you've actually responded. And listen, right? So you've already thought, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to say, and you're not actually there. You're not there with them. There's this great big gulf between you and this other person, and it could be about anything. It could be the dishes, you didn't make the bed, you know, you walked past me this morning, you know, you didn't say hello, you didn't say good evening, whatever it could be, right? And actually being present with them in that moment to say, you know, oh, I didn't do that. You know what? Have a bit of humility, acknowledge it, say, you know what, I'm sorry, my head was somewhere else.
But I think
being able to have that is a tough thing,
it's
I
a path.
think.
I think, you know, Samuel, I think when it comes to communication, I think it's the hardest, because a lot of people might leave. So if a husband and wife are having a conversation, a lot of the time people walk away feeling unsatisfied, and there's some form of resentment towards one another. I have not been heard. I have not been understood. And we take it so personal. And sometimes when a person expresses what they are, because I think first you have to create a safe environment where that person can feel comfortable to open up and talk to you about things. And if not there, then the person will feel like, what's the point of even communicating, because I'm going to be attacked, you know? So I think when people are discussing, are we discussing to find a solution so we can move on, or are we discussing so I have it, like I want to show that I'm right in this situation and you're at fault here, you know? So I think it's so important to make sure that what kind of what do you want to gain out of this communication? Are you here to just moan about the same thing, or you know, are we resolving an issue? And how do we resolve issues? Because my mom always said to me when I was young, when two people are upset, nothing good is going to come out of this, of that interaction. So sometimes a person has to walk away. If you know you can control that anger or whatever you're feeling, walk away so you can calm down, and then you can have a better discussion. But then it's also not leaving if a person's coming to you and talking to you about something and you're feeling a certain way, but you're not ready to talk about it, don't just storm off. Just say, look, I'm not ready. I'm going to make irrational decisions right now because I'm in my feelings. So let me go off and calm down. And when I'm ready, I'm going to come and finish this conversation with you where we can have a discussion about it. We're not here to have a war, because a lot of households need to work together to go in one direction. And a lot of people are coming at each other. It's attacking one another, you know? So
listen, it's always been poor behavior that has let the nation down. When it comes to the Israelites, it's always been our poor behavior that has let us down. Now, guys, we've only got 10 minutes. There's been some wonderful, wonderful points that you've raised, and we haven't got through the things that we said we were going to talk about.
So we've got so much.
We
need another part.
But what I do take away from what you guys are saying, and you've said some wonderful things, it goes straight back to the beginning, knowing yourself. The point about we as human beings are always changing. We're always evolving. We're going through different stages of our life. So Minister Charmaine today is not the same person she was 20 years ago in the same marriage. I've grown, I've evolved. So am I checking in with my partner? Does my partner know where I'm at? Do I know where he is at? And it's exactly what you say, you know, having that communication, but also sticking to that agreement. What are your points of reference? What are your morals? What are your ethics? How are you behaving? I think we fall in the pit when it comes to our behavior. When it came to serving the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it was our poor behavior. And this is why Jesus Christ had to come and say, guys, have a little bit of love for each other. Like the law will take you so far, you know, the law of Moses will take you so far, but let's add a little bit of love, a little bit of mercy. You know, let's bring that in. Let's treat each other. It says, love thy brethren as you love yourself. That is one of the greatest commandments. And so that virtue is so, so, so important. So I want to close with this scripture, guys, which I think is an appropriate scripture to end with. So if we could turn our Bibles, please, to Galatians chapter 5. And we're going to go to verse 22. So pull up. And this is just some of the virtues that we need to consider. I was going to talk about the virtuous woman, but I'm not going to do that. As people and as Israelites, if we can work on some of these values, these virtues being behaviors, it will take us a long way. Okay. And these are what is of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So verse 22 says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. Remember, I said it was the Israelite people's behavior that messed them up. The law is like a school guide. If this happens, turn right. If that happens, turn left. If this happens, do A. If that happens, do B. But if we can work with that inner man and know how to manage our behavior and our temperance and our mindset and look at our values and virtues, and if we pray to the God of Israel for the fruit of the Spirit to be within us, not the fruits of the lust or the fruits of the world, which you'll find further up in this scripture, but the fruit of the Spirit, that will take us through some of these gray areas in our relationships that we don't always talk about. This temperance, this behavior will take us through. So let's look at this again, guys. If we practice love, love is not just a feeling, love is an action. Yeah, love is making time for somebody. It says love is kind, love is gentle. That's what it says. Love is kind, love is gentle. You need to practice it. Joy, we practice and pray for joy. Peace, because there's nothing. Long suffering means patience. Okay, we have to be patient. Gentleness in how we manage and deal with each other, being good to each other and being faithful. Okay, a lot of these things that Jacob had as an Israelite man, okay, that made him so lovable. Meekness, temperance, managing that tone of voice, managing that energy, even in difficult situations. It says against there is no law, meaning the law will be written in your inner parts. You don't need to go to the law book and turn the pages as to how to deal with your brethren, because if you apply these virtues in your relationships, then you don't need to go to no book of the law and say, what do I do again? It's in your inner parts, as the new covenant will be written in our inner parts. Okay, the new covenant is in your inner parts. So some of these things will take us forward, okay, and solve a lot of our problems as Israelites and within our relationships. What are your thoughts on that? Because that's my closing words, guys. So what are your closing words?
I think those are very good points to try and adhere to for a successful relationship. It's not easy, but if you do your best to adhere to those, I think you'll have a very strong relationship, whether that be friendship, relationship with a partner, or whatever.
It's working on the inner man, definitely. I think it's also coming down to trying. Sometimes it's not you must, in a sense. It's all about I want to make every effort consciously to try, because sometimes when we actually try, that's where, when you put in the effort, I think it's so important to, when you're in a relationship, is to have the patience. Not everyone was born to be patient, but you can try and find that, try and manage that and say, okay, let me try. I think it's important, because obviously relationships sometimes will drive you and make you feel like you're going crazy. But I think it's the attempt. I think that's so important. And that's what makes a relationship grow. If you speak to people that are, that are lived together for a long time, when it comes to relationships, it's the fact that they've tried. It's I'm fighting. Sometimes you have to fight with yourself in order to kind of gain something. You have to keep trying. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, you have to have the willpower, and that's gonna keep you going, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, Afa. Samuel.
I mean, listen, you guys have said it all. I'm just going to be saying a version of it, but for me, it is, in all of our relationships, redefining what it means for you, what works for you. And these are excellent points, meekness, long-suffering, gentleness, faith. These are all things that, we are working on and we should continue to work on. And I guess we only really grow in the spirit when we have trials to work through it. When we have challenging bosses or challenging partners or challenging brothers and sisters, to be able to exhibit these qualities. So, I count it all joy. And I think, for us, we are the teachers. We are here to show that, this can be done. The God of Israel has given us, this wonderful guide. And I think for us, we need to be able to pick it up and run with it, But again, I always come back to, the youth of the day and the people that are living out here in the West and having these different kind of messages. They need to have these kind of conversations consistently. We need to be sharing this more and more so that we have, strong, healthy, vibrant communities. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, panel. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. And, let's just say this is part one, because there is so much more to say. We've opened the conversation up. And as you said, we need to keep having these conversations. There is not this is how you do it and this is how it has to be. This is, let's talk about these things. Let's look at the Bible. Let's look at how our forefathers maneuvered. Let's look at what their values were. Let's look at the culture of Israel. Moreover, I leave you with this, Israelites, and those of you who are interested in serving the greatest God there is. If there's any relationship that you really want to focus on the one that is knowing and serving your God. My God is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And that relationship is the most important relationship that I could ever had, for he lays the foundation for all the other relationships that we have. So brethren, I hope you got something out of this. Peace, good night, and I wish you well, and I'll see you all soon.
Peace.
Peace.